Court took up a case that could decide how quickly President Trump can get his second-term agenda off the ground.
The justices are hearing arguments about the ability for a single judge.
The president has not read the Mueller report or the Constitution, and that is why the president once again today proved himself to be the most ignorant person in the history.
Fisher was at the Supreme Court all day, and he's here now to give us some context in the way only Jordan can. So, Jordan, we know this case is fundamentally about who gets to be an American citizen
of the American presidency and possibly American politics, by saying that he would turn to the judges that he has appointed to the United States Supreme Court.
Did a Trump-appointed judge just overrule what other Trump judges decided? Judge Stephanie Haynes is using 200-year-old dictionary definitions to justify deporting immigrants under a law from 1898, while her fellow Trump appointees said, "That's ridiculous." This wild legal fight has reached the Supreme Court, where Justice Sotomayor is writing fiery dissents about people being sent to dangerous prisons in El Salvador. What's going on? Is this judicial rebellion or just Grumpy Trumpy's latest chaos plan working perfectly? I'll break down this legal food fight in simple terms. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. So what happens when a judge decides to pull out dictionaries older than your great-grandma's cookbook?
Sort of come to a head here in the first few months of the Trump administration, and that's whether individual federal judges can impose what are called national or universal injunctions. That's an order that bars the federal government
to save him from impeachment. That will never happen, but it does seem that today is the first day of what promises to be a Trump administration
across the entire country from doing something, in this case, executing President Trump's order to deny citizenship documents to children whose parents are not necessarily in the country legally or permanently.
Illegal war with every House committee seeking information and witnesses from the Trump administration. And we are very fortunate tonight on this first night of this epic legal battle of Trump versus the Congress.
Well, Trump-appointed Judge Stephanie Haynes is giving us a front-row seat to that weird legal show. She's made a ruling that's got lawyers across America scratching their heads and wondering if she's living in 2023 or 1823. Here's the deal. Haynes looked at this dusty old law called the Alien Enemies Act from 1898. This law was meant for wartime, when America might need to kick out people from enemy countries. But Haynes decided this ancient law should apply to a gang called Tren de Aragua. The funny part? Other Trump judges already said, nope, that's not what this law is for. But Haynes was like, hold my gavel, I'm going in a different direction. And her big legal argument? She pulled out dictionaries from the 1700s and early 1800s to figure out what a predatory incursion means. I'm not kidding. While other judges are using modern legal thinking, Haynes is flipping through pages that were written when people thought bloodletting cured diseases. You can almost picture her sitting in her chambers surrounded by crumbling books, maybe writing with a quill pen, deciding immigrants' fates based on how people talked when powdered wigs were the hot fashion trend. This isn't your average legal disagreement where judges politely disagree about fine points of law. This is a full-on Trump judge civil war over immigration. Haynes is breaking ranks with her fellow Trump appointees, which makes this extra juicy. It's like watching members of the same family fight at Thanksgiving dinner. Awkward, but you can't look away. Now, the Tren de Aragua gang isn't exactly a group of angels. They're involved in serious criminal activities, drug dealing, violence, the whole bad guy package. But Haynes is stretching the law like silly putty by saying these criminals count as some kind of military invaders. The 1898 law was meant for actual wars with other countries, not street gangs. Other judges, including those handpicked by Orange Turd himself, have looked at the same law and said, absolutely not. A gang isn't the same as an enemy nation's army. This makes Haynes the weird outlier in this legal food fight, standing alone with her ancient dictionaries while everyone else is in the 21st century. The most mind-boggling part is that Haynes is claiming a criminal gang qualifies as a predatory incursion based on dictionary definitions from more than 200 years ago. Imagine if doctors today only used medical books from the 1700s. They'd be prescribing mercury for headaches and drilling holes in your skull to release the bad spirits. But somehow in law, Haynes thinks it's totally fine to ignore how language and society have changed since Thomas Jefferson was walking around. When you read her ruling, it feels like she started with the conclusion she wanted. deport these gang members, and then went hunting for any justification, even if she had to blow the dust off dictionaries older than the light bulb. It's like when a kid breaks a vase and then comes up with increasingly wild explanations. The cat did it. No, wait, a ghost. Actually, it was technically already broken if you look at the definition of broken from 1783. The real problem is, this case isn't just about old books and weird legal arguments. It's about actual people being shipped off to dangerous conditions. Some of these folks might even have legal claims to stay in the US, but they're getting caught in this bizarre time warp ruling. Haynes is playing dictionary detective while people get sent to a prison in El Salvador that makes American jails look like luxury hotels. This whole mess shows what happens when judges stop being impartial and start making rulings that match their political preferences. The law isn't supposed to change based on what dictionaries a judge decides to pull off the shelf, but in Grumpy Trumpy's judiciary, apparently anything goes. What makes this even wilder is that the Supreme Court, you know, the folks who are supposed to step in when lower courts go off the rails, had a chance to put the brakes on this dictionary time machine. And what they did next is just as shocking as Haynes' ruling. Justice Sotomayor was so angry about it that she basically wrote the judicial equivalent of a diss track aimed at her own colleague. Now we've got judges fighting judges, immigrants caught in the crossfire, and a Supreme Court that seems more interested in playing politics than interpreting laws consistently. If this is what Trump's judicial legacy looks like, maybe we should all start reading those 1700s dictionaries to understand what justice will mean in America's future. While Judge Haynes was playing with her dusty old dictionaries, the Supreme Court decided to jump into this messy fight, and they didn't just dip their toes in, they did a full cannonball that splashed water all over our legal system. The Supreme Court made a shocking decision to let the deportations under this Ancient Alien Enemies Act continue. It's like they saw Judge Haynes' weird dictionary time travel and said, "That looks fun, let's join in." This move by the Supreme Court was so bad that Justice Sonia Sotomayor basically had a judicial meltdown. We're talking about one of the most experienced justices on the court, someone who chooses her words carefully, but this time she was so angry that she wrote a dissent that practically had smoke coming off the pages. She called the court's decision both inexplicable and dangerous, words that Supreme Court justices don't usually throw around unless something is seriously wrong. When a Supreme Court justice uses words like inexplicable, that's judge speak for what the actual heck are you people doing? It's the judicial equivalent of your grandma dropping an F-bomb at Thanksgiving dinner. You know something has gone terribly wrong when grandma starts cursing, and you know something's wrong with the court when justices start using words like inexplicable. What got Sotomayor so fired up? She pointed out something truly disturbing. Real people, including some who might legally be allowed to stay in the US, were being shipped off to a dangerous prison in El Salvador. This isn't just some abstract legal debate, it's about human beings potentially facing violence and even death because the Supreme Court decided to rush through deportations without proper legal review. In her dissent, Sotomayor warned that the government's actions could lead to both non-citizens and even United States citizens being taken off the streets, forced onto planes, and confined to foreign prisons with no opportunity for redress if judicial review is denied unlawfully before removal. That's not some minor oopsie daisy. That's terrifying. People could be grabbed off American streets, thrown onto planes, and locked up in foreign prisons with zero chance to prove they have a right to stay here. The justice also highlighted the extraordinary harm these people face, particularly the risk of being sent to a prison in El Salvador. The government even admitted they can't get people back once they're sent there, even if they made a mistake. As Sotomayor put it, that's indefensible. She called for a higher standard, saying, "We as a nation and a court of law should be better than this." When a Supreme Court justice has to remind everyone that America should be better than sending possibly innocent people to dangerous foreign prisons, you know we've hit rock bottom. You can almost picture Sotomayor at her desk, wanting to flip tables as she writes this dissent. Meanwhile, her colleagues are just ignoring basic legal protections like they're optional extras on a car. Do you want the brake package with your new legal system? No? Okay, we'll just skip those pesky legal protections then. The worst part is that the court's decision basically rewards the government for playing fast and loose with people's rights. It's like giving a gold star to the kid who keeps pulling fire alarms at school. This poses a serious threat to how how our legal system is supposed to work. The government can now deport people without proper legal review, potentially sending legal residents to a prison in El Salvador, and the Supreme Court is giving them a thumbs up. Sotomayor wasn't alone in her outrage. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson also wrote her own dissent, calling the majority's approach a fly-by-night approach to the work of the Supreme Court. She called it misguided and dangerous, sounding just as frustrated as Sotomayor. Jackson was particularly upset about the court using its emergency docket for making big decisions without proper consideration. This emergency docket, by the way, is supposed to be for truly urgent matters that can't wait for the normal process, but it's becoming the court's drive-through window for making major decisions without the usual care and attention. It's like cooking a gourmet meal in a microwave. You might get food faster, but it's probably going to be half raw and give everyone indigestion. Jackson emphasized that lower courts should handle complex issues first, building a solid foundation before the Supreme Court steps in. But instead, the court is skipping steps like a kid rushing through homework. And when judges rush, people suffer. So while Grumpy Trumpy's appointed Judge Haynes was playing dictionary detective, the Supreme Court decided to play along, making a decision so bad that 2 justices basically wrote the legal equivalent of "What is wrong with you people?" And they weren't done making questionable moves. Their timing on certain cases seems more than a little suspicious. Is the Supreme Court playing calendar games? Let's look at the fishy timing. While the court moved super fast to let these deportations happen, they've been dragging their feet on Trump's immunity case from January 6th. They're moving slower than my grandpa after Thanksgiving dinner on that one. The contrast is so obvious, it's almost funny. For this deportation case, the Supreme Court was like, we need to decide this right now. But when it comes to deciding if Trump can claim immunity for his January 6th actions, suddenly they need months to think about it. It's like when a kid rushes to eat dessert but needs hours to finish their vegetables. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson noticed this weird pattern too. She called the court's approach to the deportation case fly-by-night and misguided. Those aren't words judges throw around for fun. She was basically saying the court is rushing through important decisions that deserve way more thought. It's like someone doing brain surgery after watching a 5-minute YouTube tutorial. The Supreme Court has this thing called an emergency docket that's supposed to be for super urgent matters that can't wait for the normal process. But critics are saying it's becoming the court's sneaky backdoor to make huge decisions without doing their homework. It's like skipping all the boring chapters in a textbook and just writing the final exam. The problem is, these final exams affect real people's lives. Justice Jackson thinks lower courts should handle complex issues first, building a strong foundation before the Supreme Court jumps in. That makes sense. You don't start building a house from the roof down. But that's exactly what's happening here. The court is grabbing cases before lower courts have had time to work through them properly. Meanwhile, the court keeps finding new ways to delay deciding whether Trump can claim immunity for his actions related to January 6th. This is weird because they've moved really quickly on other big cases. For the case about Trump's eligibility for the Colorado primary ballot, the court issued its opinion just 25 days after oral arguments. But for the immunity case, crickets. This pattern is so strange that people are asking the obvious question. Are some justices intentionally slow-walking cases that might hurt Trump while fast-tracking ones that help his political agenda? It sure looks that way to a lot of legal experts. History shows the Supreme Court can move fast when it wants to. Back in 1974, the court took only 16 days after arguments to order President Nixon to release the Watergate tapes. And in 1971, they acted within 4 days to allow the publication of the Pentagon Papers. So when they claimed they need months to figure out the Trump immunity case, it doesn't really add up. The delay in the immunity case is especially suspicious because it could push Trump's trial past the election. A trial before the election could hurt Trump's chances, so delaying it would help him. It's like a referee calling timeout right when the opposing team is about to score. Justice Alito has faced extra scrutiny in all this. Someone flew an upside-down US flag at his house right after January 6th, a symbol of the Stop the Steal movement. That's raised questions about whether he should even be involved in the Trump immunity decision at all. What's happening looks a lot like the court is intentionally delaying decisions that could hurt Trump's election chances while rushing through decisions that match his immigration agenda. It's like a restaurant where some customers get their food in 5 minutes while others wait 3 hours, and the fast service always seems to go to the owner's friends. The way this is all unfolding, we're heading for an epic showdown when Judge Haynes' dictionary-inspired ruling eventually reaches the Supreme Court. Imagine a judge who thinks 200-year-old dictionaries should decide modern immigration policy, meeting a Supreme Court that seems to operate on two different timelines depending on how a case might affect Orange Turd. This whole mess shows what happens when courts start looking more like political teams than neutral judges. The Supreme Court is supposed to be the grown-up in the room, stepping in when lower courts go wild. Instead, they're playing calendar games while people get deported to dangerous conditions. And while all this is happening, Grumpy Trumpy is probably sitting back, watching the courts he packed with his picks doing exactly what he hoped they would. The timing games, the weird rulings, the delays that help his campaign. It's all working out just as he planned. And that's not just bad for the people getting deported, it's bad for everyone who depends on courts to be fair and consistent, which is basically all of us. So what do we get when judges start reaching for 200-year-old dictionaries to decide who stays in America? People getting shipped off to dangerous prisons without proper legal protection, while judges argue about what words meant when slavery was still legal. The scariest part isn't Judge Haynes' weird dictionary obsession, it's that the Supreme Court seems to be playing along. With Grumpy Trumpy's shadow hanging over the courts he packed, even the highest court in the land looks like it's playing politics instead of delivering justice. The real victims aren't the judges' bruised egos, they're the actual human beings whose lives depend on which musty old book a judge decides to open.